to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
The great melting pot is just not true. Sociologists have even acknowledged that America is not a melting pot. It's more like a salad bowl where you have Asian cultures and African American cultures and white cultures and Hispanic cultures all existing together. But he said, if that's the case, then what white evangelicalism has done is it's taken a salad bowl and it's dumped ranch dressing on it.
I was coordinating like visits like abroad, and then also when you're executing a visit from a head of state or head of government, so a president or prime minister or a king or queen, it felt really meaningful in that you're contributing to diplomacy. Like in technical ways, you had a diplomatic passport. You were playing the role of a diplomat. So because you were the main linchpin that made that visit work or not work, you were literally executing that visit, and you were the main U.S. liaison. It felt really meaningful and intentional.
What I recommend for anybody, even if you're vegan or have some other weird diet, is real whole foods. Right? So, vegetables, fruits, meats. If you go to a grocery store and you stay on the perimeter of the store, okay, that's where you're going to find your eggs. That's where you're going to find your meat. That's where you're going to find your veggies, your fruits, your milk, that type of stuff, your dairies. That's what I recommend for everybody.
Yeah, they do stem cell transplants for like cancer patients and different things like that, or like they inject them into joints for athletes and stuff like that. So this is basically just like he was getting injections just into his arm intravenously. And the goal is that they go wherever the body needs them, wherever the most inflammation is, they go and kind of replenish and take over the unhealthy cells.
You can look at a brain scan and it would look similar to when you crack cocaine. Sugar will light up the brain in the same areas. So its qualities are as addictive as crack cocaine. That's why, none of us really want to have the conversation about giving it up.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, once people do, they actually feel a lot better.
I read the Bible 4 times last year. And the first time when I read it in 2 months for the first time. I've read the Bible, I don't know how many times, at least once a year for a really long time.
Wow.
But actually I saw that I don't know if you may have been the reason that I decided to read it in 2 months, because you did that,
You beat
right?
me bad. You almost did it in half the time. I did it in 3.5 months.
Yeah, I did it.
You
in
read
2
the
months.
entire Bible through in 2 months?
I did.
We go to the library about once every week, once every 2 weeks. We'll get 100 books.
You'll get 100 books once every couple of weeks?
Yeah.
For the whole family?
Yeah, and just rip through them. Yeah, we're voracious.
This is in addition to the couple thousand books in the library.
That's right.
In your personal library.
And then we have a bookshelf in our room, a nice bookshelf that we acquired. And I have the bottom 3 shelves. Bonnie's got the top 3 shelves. Those are books that we've bought and haven't read yet.
Understanding sonship has been a big one for me. And knowing that in being a son, a son and daughter of God, being part of His family, and knowing that adoption, vision is so important to me, because just part of that has to do with the fact of how I grew up.
Because look, the sooner you and I both figure out if you're the right person or not for the company, the sooner you're going to get to what is right for you.
In my mind, it points to one of 2 realities. Either one, at the highest levels of government around the world, every first world country in the world is completely inept, and they have no control over their societies, no ability to actually force people to truly lock down and quarantine like they did when polio was going around. Or, and this is where I'm leaning, at the highest levels where you would believe to have the best data, they know that this isn't actually as life-threatening as all the news media circus would have us believe it is. And that's why we haven't seen any first world government outside of maybe some communist nations really dramatically shut down the entire country in an extreme way.
What lives in dumps? Rats, gnarly bugs and all the. I hate maggots.
I hate rats.
So the thing is, like, if I kill all the rats and the maggots in the dump, a week later, 10 days later, a year, a month, whatever, they're going to come back. But if I clean up the dump, what never comes back?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a rat might show up looking for something, but it's not going to stay because there's nothing there for it to feed off of.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
So, like, our whole goal is to create a healthy, beautiful, pristine, like, I always envision, like, rolling hills and, like, you know, the sky, you see the antelope and the deer doing their thing. Like, let me create that within my system so that if a rat does come, it has no reason to stay.
Is the word opportunity. I lived in a healthcare corporate environment for most of my life. And what reigned supreme was the budget. And if you had a budget, you were a hero. If you were behind budget, you were in trouble. And the thing that struck me was that a budget is a made-up number. It's a made-up number. And really one of the few things of my own personal discoveries is that it's about the opportunity.
Sugar abuse is the world's least discussed and most widespread addiction. It is one of the hardest of all habits to kick. As with all stimulants, ingestion of sugar is followed by a brief euphoric rush, which is itself followed by depression and guilt. Sugar addiction rarely occurs alone as a syndrome. Mixed addictions, for example, sugar and caffeine, are more common. Sugar abuse is often involved in the development of serious alcohol abuse. An absolute correlation has been shown between high sugar consumption and high alcohol intake outside meals. After alcohol and tobacco, sugar is the most damaging, addictive substance consumed by human beings.
And then you have the transatlantic slave trade, which these racist ideas are great because what they do is they demonize and dehumanize a people group so that these other folks can make money off of this transatlantic slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't stop after the Civil War. Those racist ideas continue and on up to this day.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I try to tell my students is I try to take the history of the past and help them draw not a dotted line, but a solid line to what's happening today.
At one point, I think it was 1841, my family was the largest slaveholding family in Williamson County, over 240 slaves. And so it's something that, I talk with a lot of students, and when we teach African-American history, of course, a lot of people are like, well, my family didn't own slaves and I'm not racist and all that. Right. Well, I say, well, I can't say that.
Yeah.
My family did.
That idea of having to be better in order to have access to the same opportunities. I think I know that's something that's been drilled into me ever since I was a child. And I know same thing with my husband. Jake, he's African-American. He was, his family is from the United States, but that's something that we could both very much relate to.
So I read, I write, I'll pray and meditate as part of that. Sometimes I'll write out my prayers. All right. And then I exercise. If the gym's open, I love going to the gym. It's not. But I can do push-ups and crunches and body weight squats at home, right? And I can do them in a hotel room, or I can do them in the jungle of Honduras if I'm out doing a mission trip somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter where I do them. I can do all of those things regardless of where I am. So I had to engineer a morning routine that lacked excuses.
Was sitting there writing the paper, and all of a sudden, like literally, I stand up against my will, and this force, I think it was a demon, literally was like, well, I can't say what it was saying some vulgar things to me, and it was like
audibly.
In my, like I could hear it. Wow. It wasn't like it was in the room, it was like in my brain. And so I was like, and it's like, you're gonna go into the bathroom and just slit your wrists, like you're terrible, blah blah blah, cursing. And I was like, whoa, and I was walking, and I remember, and I like kind of like, it was like out of a movie. I literally like kind of turned my body and started walking instead towards my towards my den, which my balcony is outside of that. It was like, great, you're gonna jump off the balcony like head first, you piece of ass, you know, you're gonna. And I was like, whoa, and I start crying. And this is within a matter of like 10 seconds. And I just start crying, and I was like, and I said, God help me. And the minute I said that, boom, it went away, and I like collapsed on the ground.
He'll say, okay, I'm creating a sidebar here. And he'll say that explicitly.
Yes.
So this isn't the main point. This is peripheral to what I'm saying, but it matters to some degree. So let me just build this real quick. He says, I'm building it, does it, done building it, back to this.
Yeah. When you say space to wonder, what do you mean by that?
Explore.
Okay.
Music, art, ideas.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Yeah, just like, Rome.
Yeah.
I mean, the fence line of God's kingdom is really, really big.
Yeah, it is.
So you're not going to probably walk off the property.
Yeah. Some would think that you could very easily.
I know. Exactly. And there's a lot of fear that comes from that.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
But when you realize, like, no, this is vast.
Yeah.
I mean, he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills.
I think it's a tough thing for someone who started and founded a business and has grown it to the point where they truly need to sit in that CEO seat to say, yeah, I'm going to delegate all of what used to be my daily work that, I was grinding on for a year before this. I'm going to delegate that all to the rest of my team so that I have time to just think.
Yeah.
That's, it's a scary thing, to be honest.
The words of Christ has always done what it needed to do, right? It never returned to him void. So he sent out his word, and when it comes back to him, it's not going to come back void, right? So even more, we should be speaking these truths to one another, speaking these truths to our neighbor, because we realize that especially in times like this, that the only one who can actually heal our hearts from the brokenness that we feel, you know what I mean? Heal our hearts from the hate that we may feel towards our neighbor. It's Christ.
We did have patterns. I mean, we had breakfast together, not with Ray every day, but with me. Then we'd go about our daily duties, and we would have a sit-down dinner together nearly every night.
Oh, really?
And a Sunday noon meal after church. And in the evenings, when the children were little, I would clean up the kitchen, and Ray would bathe them and get them into bed, and then we'd all read together. And as they grew older, we would have our Bible time together then. Ray led us in family devotions.
In the morning or the evening?
In the evening. It just worked better in the evening for us, Kent, because in the morning, we were all thinking, oh, is he taking too long? Or, why is that child praying so long when we've got to catch the bus? Or, it just worked better for us.
Okay.
In the
After
evening.
dinner?
After dinner. We usually did it around dessert.
Okay.
And we'd say, sweet as a honeycomb are your words to my mouth.
It was a passion play that really something we wanted to do. And not being from we launched in June of 2011 on the same day. We opened the store. We had a launch party that night and launched our website.
Oh, wow.
And, you're trying to produce a product in a foreign country. You don't have a lot of leverage because you don't have volume.
Sure.
Traveling a lot. I think I went to Italy 35 times. Sometimes I'd go for... not counting the one night that you sleep on the plane, be there 2 nights and come home.
She was sitting in a terminal by herself, reading Into the Wild. There was plenty of empty seats, and I went and sat down right beside her.
Did you leave one chair?
No,
right there?
Right beside her.
Why? Did you just were attracted to her right out of the gate? Or
it was and is a smoke show. So I had why not? There she is, sitting there. She's beautiful. Here's my chance.
What'd you do, or what'd you say?
She was annoyed.
Well, I can imagine. The type of thing probably happened all the time.
So Jacksonville has a large naval population. They have an air station there. I don't have hair, as you can see, because we're sitting together. But if you're listening, so I'm a pretty fit bald guy. So she had naturally assumed I was in the Navy. So her first question was, "Are you in the Navy?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And then I persisted to annoy her, and she wanted to get back in her book, and she said, "Don't you have a book or something?" Which really set me off because I am a pretty voracious reader. And so I said the B word.
Oh, no.
I said, "Please, come on." And so I reached in my bag and showed her what I was reading. But that to her was like, who is this guy? And then so we hit it off.
You set the hook a little bit. I see what you did there. Yeah. Did
So-
she know out of the gate that you were a sales professional, or weren't you at this point?
No, she didn't know.
Okay. But you were, though.
I
You were
was, yeah.
using some sales tactics?
Yeah.
And then you wound up sitting beside each other
And
on
then
the
I
plane.
told her on the plane that she'd be my girlfriend in 30 days. She said, "You're crazy." And then she started texting me over the break. So I hard pressed and back off, right? Create that scarcity and just take it away. Take it away. And then I changed my flight to fly back with her.
Oh, wow.
And the rest is history.
I was starved for a time as a punishment. If a man does not work, he shall not eat. I wasn't getting schoolwork done on time. So
Oh, no.
I think I lost 20, I want to say like 28 pounds, 26 pounds. I could be a little off as a 13-year-old in a month.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an awful time to be starving a boy.
Yeah.
13 years old?
I was 13 years old, yeah.
Wow.
And, to this day, like sometimes I have trouble sleeping and I'll go out and I'll eat a little something and then I can go to sleep. So I can't sleep unless I eat something. Because again, my body's just, like there's like long-term stuff. So it's like the molestation was huge. Like that's the clear piece.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact he wouldn't deal directly with that meant we didn't even get into the rest.
I see.
So, but even then, the abuse was horrible. It was evil. But we loved our dad, and we still love our dad. And if he were to repent, it'd be a very slow process, but I would, by God's grace, be willing to rebuild.
Never a teleprompter. If you watch local news nowadays, there used to be a notepad that everybody carried. Now it's our phones.
Okay.
We have our phones with our notes. And what we just listened to was a live interview, so I didn't have notes either. I was holding an umbrella and then holding the microphone. So it was just off the top of my head. And I had talked with that woman at the protest, and we'd gone over questions. And then we were live.
So to be weightless, when you are weightless, you're relieving all pressure off of your back, your neck, your joints. So everything gets to rest, recover, realign. Your skin, meanwhile, is your largest organ. So that's absorbing all of the health benefits of Epsom salt, which is magnesium sulfate. Magnesium is a naturally occurring mineral within our bodies that is responsible for over 300 bodily functions.
My grandma goes, "Okay, well, we'll leave at 3:30 because I want to meet them too. We don't just let our grandson go out with anybody."
Whoa.
And my girl, now this is some deep, profound stuff. At 16, I felt no.
Yeah.
But my grandma got in the car with me. We drove over to the girl's house. She meets the parent. It turned out that my grandma ended up knowing the girl's mom, and so it was like, cool and everything.
Yeah.
My grandma, she said, yeah, we had to come see who y'all were because we don't just let Jason go out with anybody. And she said that to them.
Oh, wow.
So then we took my grandma back home, and then we went to the movies, though. So.
Total support from day one, and has really been, for me, over the past 2 years, therapy. Like, it's been my place to face my darkness. Like, it's been where I've left tears on the floor. It's just been that place. So it's been that for me, and a place of healing, which again says a lot about the community I'm surrounded with there.
Yes.
It wouldn't be that if I wouldn't feel safe there.
He talks about the place of holiness among believers. And so I think he would look at the church today and say that in many ways we've lost our first love. And I think in our day of celebrity pastors giving themselves over, desperately trying to build a platform and become influencers and thought leaders rather than physicians of the soul. The old Puritan idea of a pastor being a physician of the soul. Ferguson once said the Puritans were not just physicians of the soul, but they were also pharmacists of the conscience. They knew which shelf to go to get the right medicine. Right? Wow. They were physicians, but they knew which shelf to go to take the right medicine, to the right salve to put on the wounds of their people.
It's a cop-out to say that's the only way you can be creative, because it's not. But yeah, it takes away the day in and day out thought of bills and requirements and things, and you can listen. I believe creativity is all around us, and it's tapping into it. So whatever your muse is, if for Post Malone his muse is cigarettes and Bud Lights, that's what his muse is. If his muse is going and sitting on a beach somewhere and writing that song, then that's what his muse is. If it's having a person around you, if it's getting stoned out of your brain and going and locking yourself in a castle and recording. Everybody has their different way of doing that. I think creativity is something that if you're too busy in the world, you don't stop and listen to it. You don't hear.
He might have cleared an hour here and there. It's pretty rare.
Okay.
Yeah. We're not. He did recognize the law of diminishing returns on this thing.
Okay.
And he told a story one time where there was a dear old lady in our church who was, just a faithful member, had been since before he got there, and he was preaching. He was going on minute 48. She just stands up and taps her watch.
No.
Yeah. Just the kind of thing that you can do when you're 80. Like, what are you going to say to me?
Yeah.
And he was younger as a preacher then, so she was twice his age.
Sure.
And she just stood up, tapped her watch, and was like, wrap this thing up.
That's funny.
Pot roast is cooking.
This is why emergency care is one of the greatest things of our time in medical practice. People literally being rescued from the jaws of death. That happens all the time. And the problem is that we have not integrated the things that are more about sustaining our health and optimizing our health, because the medical practice, as I say, has evolved as a response to serious medical crises. And so that's what we get educated about in medical school. We don't get educated about, vitamins or minerals or enzymes or things like that. We get educated about kidneys are failing, hearts are failing, lungs are failing, things that are like, hurry up and call in the medical doctor because this person is decompensating.
Tracking also my routines for the day, the sauna, the cold shower, devotional, what I talk about, thoughts for the day, and then I'll have like a good deed. What did I do to help somebody out that day, and then put an overall mood. So that's pretty. I just started doing the actual spreadsheet for 2020.
If you meet the right guy, I don't really care what his nationality is, what his ethnicity is, what his skin color is. Like, if you meet the right one, it's game over. You know what I mean? Like, it's so, just because maybe some white guys wanted to date but didn't want to marry doesn't mean you won't get married to a white guy.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying?
My mom keeps saying that she thinks I'm going to marry a white guy. I'm like, Mom, that goes against everything that I'm fighting for here.
Well, I don't think you, I don't have an opinion on whether you should or you should not.
It's going to destroy my brand.
Right?
Yeah.
So you don't feel good. You would not feel good about marrying a white guy.
No, I'm not going to say that. I'm very rebellious and I'm very unapologetic. So if I met a white guy and we got married, like, I wish somebody would say something. I have my white guy with his Black Lives Matter shirt on.
Right.
I mean, he would have to be like down for the call.
I think it really became a retraining of my mind into how I was thinking about things and situations and people and what was guiding my life versus the stories that had been guiding it for so long and the pain that had been guiding my life. And so, I think it was a little bit of both. I wasn't the only, that was really, I think that was my therapy, forgiveness and just kind of working through that. And I think talking about it, I've always loved depth and deep conversations.
I'm all up for people using pressure, public persuasion to try to move a brand in a specific way or maybe educate. But I don't think you just go throw the baby out with the bathwater and just cancel Netflix.
But when I'm curious, it also allows me to pull on that empathetic place to go, you're throwing a temper tantrum about what? And if you can slow it down instead of just getting the behavior fixed, you go, hey, buddy, well, clearly you're upset. Can you tell me, can you find any words around that? Like, what's that about? Developmentally, especially if they're young. Like, I don't want to leave. Oh, so this is about grief. You loved being in that place with that family or jumping on the trampoline or whatever. Like, this is actually you learning about separation and the grief of loss. So you're dealing with loss. Yeah. You don't have a lot of words, but you know how to cry and stomp your feet. But this is an opportunity to talk about loss. It's really hard when you love something to walk away from it, isn't it?
I think for me, the value is
in the inspiration from the works, from their novels, and how it informs how I am as a creator, as a, as an employee, as a, as a human being. Whenever I come to the end of a novel, I just feel accomplished and inspired and frankly refreshed.
I'm a big believer in the idea that belief isn't what you say, it's what you do. What you do is what you actually believe, right? And so it's really it's not clear to me that there's not a kind of religious fervor, in the kind of patriotism that many of us grew up with and are accustomed to seeing.
I want to say that the stats that came out yesterday were, if you look across all the major media networks, 96% of the coverage of Trump is negative. Well, I get it that, he says some stuff that ticks me off.
Yep.
But we're focused on policy and caring for people. It can't be 96%.
If you look at Grudem's response to Piper, it's a lot lengthier than Piper's one-off.
Sure.
This is the only thing Piper has published is like 7 or 8. I didn't do the word count, but like 700 or 800 word op-ed, right?
Yep.
Grudem goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, he does.
And this is not the first, even this year. In 2016, let's remember he endorsed President Trump before he rescinded his endorsement of President Trump, before he re-endorsed President Trump in a matter of a few weeks.
I'm probably more skeptical now of a lot of people who are consultants if they haven't been in business.
Sure. Yeah.
Only because I would be skeptical of myself.
Sure.
2020 bill would be skeptical of, say, 2017 bill.
And I think when you read a commentary or use a commentary in a sermon, rather than it being something that is originated through your study and it's original to you, you run the risk of reading the paper rather than just telling the feeling, like explaining like with passion something that you discovered or learned and how it impacted you.
So both are true. There's like this heritage narrative that's just there, and it just means like Southern pride, or it means like American rebelliousness. Like you'll see people. You can go into rural areas in Ohio and you'll see a Confederate flag, and they're like, "Well, Ohio was a Union state," but it's like this rebel thing. So there's that. But the things that really happen, the pictures of people like protesting the integrations of schools and them waving the flag, or the Ku Klux Klan using the flag, that is real.
In many ways, the federalism system that we have in our country between the federal government and the state government is almost, at least a lot of times, out of sight, out of mind. We don't really think about the clashes.
It really
there.
is, yeah.
But the framers really imagined more of a conglomeration of states than one big country. They wanted something stronger than the Articles of Confederation that existed before the Constitution, because under the Articles of Confederation, the federal government couldn't levy any taxes. They had a very difficult time getting anything done. States had to volunteer their money, and of course, no one did. And so you had all these war debts that the federal government incurred to fight off the British.
Yep.
And yet the states didn't want to pay their fair share. So a lot of those things led to the real collapse of the Articles of Confederation.
Can you pull up the one video where it's like at least the one video that we saw? Yeah. Oh, okay. This is Kryptonite. Just play a little bit of that, Andrew. I mean, look at all those people.
It's crazy. I will say, without getting into political stuff, I remember when we did this, because like the whole fake news thing was starting.
Oh, yeah?
Whenever people were talking about it, and I remember we rehearsed the night before, and CNN ran the picture of our rehearsal and said nobody showed up for this event.
No way.
Yeah, like the next day, like people were sending us stuff, and I was like, that's the most people I've ever seen in one place. And the next day
goodness.
It's because we got
static.
We got trashed big time for doing that.
You got trashed for doing what?
For playing the inauguration. It was like
Three Doors got trashed for playing the inauguration.
Hatred.
And Trump came in and just basically said, excuse the French, F you. I mean, literally said that. Said the press is an enemy of the people. The left hates America. It's time for us to make America great again. Screw these people. Let's go. And every bubba, every middle-class guy, every guy who's lost a job because of
international economics of the U.S. government, everybody who just pulled their hair out when Hillary talked about any policy, everybody who wept the night that Obama lit up the White House in the colors of the gay flag, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of them said, I'm with this guy.
A job, a good paying job comes with insurance, and you save your 401k and you have a pension. That's the life. That's what we should be selling in America. And I disagree with you. I think that there are a lot of people that you base your opinion on that socialism works for them because they grew up they're just kind of brainwashed by the idea that it's all unfair, this and that and the other. But I can tell you one thing. Almost all immigrants know socialism is the wrong way to go because they came from it.
I agree with that 100%.
They came from countries that are everybody's trying to mention. Why do you think in Spanish community, Mexican community bordering Mexico ends up going for Trump? He's the racist that's building a wall. Why are you voting for him? Why does he get the Cuban vote? It's because they came here to escape that. And it doesn't take much. A lot of young people can do a lot of stupid things in school. I learned some stupid things. I came out of school as a bleeding heart liberal, and I just kept trying to make it work, and it just wouldn't work, wouldn't add up. The incentive is what makes things work. You have to have capitalist incentive to create innovation that creates jobs. Socialism did not bring you the Apple phone. Capitalism did.
Yes. By piston, you just mean gently in and out. Mm-hmm. How, when you go in and out, do you go in and out like an eighth of an inch, or do you go in and out like half of an inch? Like when you piston, how big is that piston?
Depends.
This sounds crazy, man.
If we're talking about, if you're talking about a glute, sometimes it's, about that far. It could be
3 or 4 inches.
It could be.
You'll put that needle 3 or 4 inches into a glute, and then pull it back out 3 or 4 inches, then put it back in.
Maybe not quite that far,
but 1 or 2 inches.
Yeah, could be.
Like how? Like super slow? So like so slow,
No. It's quick. When you're pistoning, it's boom, 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 boom. It's pretty fast.
Man, this is crazy. So you have, what does this needle look like?
It's just acupuncture. I didn't bring it with me. It's like a fine. Think like a threader's needle. Like if you did needle and thread, like maybe I don't know, 3/4 the size of that. It's tiny.
The other thing is, there is a corporate consciousness, that we have together. I'm not getting like weird. I mean, we all together are. Every church has a narrative that it's stewarding, and every congregation has intuitions and feelings together. And if the incoming pastor if there's any hint that the incoming pastor and the outgoing pastor in a succession, situation, are not on the same page, the church will suffer.
I am 71 years tired and fed up with seeing magnificent young men in your generation neutralized by shame. And men who were created by God for magnificence, for nobility, for impact. They were created by God to change the course of history. But they have been so beaten up inside by shame and regret. They've been hollowed out by one thing. And this one thing, when I'm interacting with guys in your generation, I don't wonder if they're exposed to porn. I know they're exposed to porn.
Mm-hmm.
It's the wallpaper of our culture. So this book is called The Death of Porn. And it's not just about guys no longer looking at porn. It's about guys coming together and rising up to starve the beast.
Do you guys not find that there's a big difference, not just in where in America you might live, but also a big difference between urban and rural? Because I feel like if you live in the country, almost no matter where you live in the out in the country, I don't really care at this point which state you live in, but if you kind of live in the country, you have a harder time seeing the viewpoint from those that live in or near a city. And if you live in or near a city, sometimes you have a harder time understanding where the country folk come from.
Yes.
People showed up at our house, like a lot. And we sat in our floor and cried. We held him, just Katie and I, sitting there, holding him, and prayed and read scripture and sang hymns for hours. Yeah, that was, I mean, holding him then. Gosh, just again, one of those like, gosh, I wish I could go back. Yeah. I just wish I could go back to that moment right there. Just like looking at him, even in his last moment. Just him looking up at us, like grasping for breath, and just like.
I think for me, that's one of the most memorable things that we do every year to think about Job is that same night we have people over and we sing hymns and we pray and we just talk about Job and remember that, because that was, we've talked about the weird complex of joy and sorrow in the midst of grief, and there was that weird joy and sorrow in being able to sing hymns and just knowing that Job was going to be in the presence of his Savior.
That's why I wrote it. I wrote it to make you feel uncomfortable. I wrote it because it's probably important that you should be thinking about this stuff. Like I have a piece in that book where sort of about intimate relationships and how sometimes as we get further along, you right when you start the relationship, it's this ecstasy, right? And tons of sex, and then you get further on in the relationship, and that just goes downhill at a dramatic level. And I wrote a piece in there that made some people feel uncomfortable, where it's like, I think a big reason of that is because we lose the physical touch outside the bedroom, just like holding hands, giving each other hugs, like kissing, watching Netflix, snuggling, that whole thing. And that was a weird piece for like, I'm assuming some of my parents' friends to read, or like some adults to read.
He died during a church business meeting, while a person had just said to him, "You're the problem and you need to go," and he like dies. No joke. Yeah, you can't script that. And
in 93, someone's dude. That is the most outlandish thing.
Yeah. It's
like a family. What do we used to call them? Members meeting, almost like a members
sort
meeting,
of
like a business meeting, like not on a Sunday morning service.
No, it was a Sunday night. Saturday. It was a Saturday night. They always did their business meetings on Saturday night.
And someone said to your grandfather, "You're the problem," and he died.
Yeah.
Two things. One, you, friend, I'm going to look at you. You were created for something unique and specific and extraordinary. And it's not going to happen automatically. Even though it's yours, it's got your name on it, it's not going to happen automatically. You have to know who you're here to be. You have to figure that out. You're only going to do what you are. You'll always hit a ceiling. Whatever this is, you'll hit the ceiling. So you have to remove the ceiling. You have to do some thought work. You have to figure that out.